talk a little bit about Dr. Masaru Emoto. He came up with a series of experiments, and the one that he was first noted for, and the one that came out in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, was his studies on water and ice crystals. And he had water that had been blessed and had treated nice, and when it was frozen, it created these beautiful crystals. They looked like snowflakes, and it was just all symmetrical and beautiful. And then he had water that was you are no good. It was talked to in a bad and a mean manner and whatnot. And then when it was frozen, ooh, the ice crystals were all jaggedy, and they weren't uniform and beautiful at all. His work was attacked, and probably rightfully so. He totally lacked in the scientific discipline of being able to produce an experiment that is reproducible. It could not be reproduced time after time after time because of the lax method that he did around it. And that lax methodology was undoubtedly contributed to the fact of his education, because Dr. Emoto got his doctorate from a mail order house out of India that had no curriculum and no coursework required, and you sent in $300 and you became a doctor. So it was really easy for everybody to attack Emoto. But what we can't escape are what the results were. The things that he observed actually happened. There's no debate about that. After he was attacked, he continued, and he did a thing with rice, and he had equal portions of rice in it. It was cooked rice, covered with, I think, a little bit of water, and he had one of this, and on it it said, thank you, we love you, and all of the students in this school would pass by this vial of rice every day, and they would repeat, thank you, I love you, and give it to it. They had another vial that was, you're ugly, I hate you, I don't like you. And the students that passed that said that to that vial of rice. And then the third vial, which he intended to be a control part of the experiment, they ignored. They didn't say anything. The results were amazing. Yes, it was expected. The rice that was spoken kindly to did well. It sat and it stayed like it was. The rice that was talked mean to, it developed a little bit of mold. It got some kind of crusty stuff on the top. But the vial of rice that was ignored rotted. Whoa. And what can we take from this? We look at, the water. Our bodies are what, 80% water? Well, you can imagine, if you send positive thoughts that can produce these beautiful crystals when that water is frozen, what's happening within your own body? And the same thing with the plants. What's happening as you grow? If you are really kind to it and loving to it, it's going to be positive. You're going to have a good result. If you are mean to it, it might mold a little bit. But if you ignore it, it's going to rot. I think of the kids, and how many times do we see kids? They would rather get in trouble. They'd rather get chewed out and get in trouble, be sent to the principal, or do whatever mom and dad has to say is punishment for it. They'd rather get in trouble and be ignored. They're no different than Emoto's rice. So no, Dr. Emoto's stuff, yes, it's all debunked. It doesn't meet the criterion for scientific exploration. But there is a grain of truth in the things that Emoto brought. And where it ties into what I'm talking about today is because those very thoughts are what we're planning and what we're doing. That is what's manifest in our lives today. And this is really shown. My Ann did a class a couple of years ago. It was based on Pam Grout and her work with E squared, and it was really a fun class. And there's all these experiments that you do in there. And one of the experiments Ann developed, she got the old-fashioned egg cartons, not the new plastic jobbers, but the real ones, and cut it in. And she had little things of dirt, and she planted seeds in it. And everybody took their bean seeds home, and everybody, you watered them the same, you treated them the same, but one of them you talked really nice to and loving and kind to, and the other you just kind of ignored. And some of the results were amazing. Now, I didn't have really great results. My little beans came up, and I think mine were a little bitty, finally sprouted, and ones I ignored never sprouted at all. But Judy Blake, oh my goodness, our coffee queen, my goodness, the queen of the coffee team, she came in and 4 weeks later, she had a beanstalk of the ones that she had been nice to and that she had treated well. It was just great. And then, and I hope I have permission, Penny and Kenny, to tell, their son Caden had his science project, and he did this thing for his science project. And so I think we have a slide. Oops, I got out of order. Minister does wrong. We see Caden in the beginning, and I can't quite read it. I'm not too sure. Okay, the happy side and the frown side, and he's got his packet of seeds. And then after, and I'm not sure how it was, month or 6 weeks, something like that, the happy side, the happy side, look at the happy side.
Day 16. Day 16. Wow. Wow, that's pretty good.
Our thoughts have a tremendous impact on who we are and what we do. And this is reproducible. This does meet the criterion for scientific work. Point number 2, the misuse of our words and thoughts produce undesired outcomes. Negative self-talk. In our foundations class, we have a segment where we take a week and we go through and we really take a look at our self-talk. What are we really saying to ourselves? And wow, it is powerful. What we discover is how much negative self-talk we have all the time. I get to take that little review twice a year, and it's amazing how much negative self-talk creeps into my vocabulary and what I do. So if you haven't had foundations for a while, you may want to consider retaking foundations, if for no other reason than to get in a formal situation where you can look at your own negative self-talk and see how much negative self-talk there is. How many times are you affecting that 80% of the water in your own body by the negative things that you're saying? Louise Hay was teaching a class in prosperity and whatnot, and she talked about using affirmations as a tool to help people look over that. And this is what she wrote. She said, "How many prosperity affirmations did you do in a day?" And they're going to say 3, probably. And then I say, "How many poverty affirmations have you done this day?" And that could be 300, depending on where you are coming from or what you have been running through your mind. And I think that's so true with all of us. We can have 300 poverty affirmations running through our mind with only 3 prosperity affirmations. What time do we have work, Lily? So, why is it so hard for us to change our thinking? In our philosophy, what we teach is change your thinking, change your life. We talk about how our thoughts are creative. Well, it seems pretty simple to me. If you want to change the conditions in your life, just change your thoughts. Pretty simple. Well, if it were that simple, I think we'd all be sitting around thinking thoughts of prosperity and abundance, and I have enough, and I have perfect health. And we would be affirming all of these things, and there would be no more poverty in the world. There would be no more lack and limitation. There would be no hunger in the world. We could just defeat all. Well, so why is it so hard to do? Our 5 senses stimulate our brain far, far more than our brain can handle it. If we could sense every odor, every sight, every feeling, touch, if we could take all of that at once, our brains couldn't do it. They would shut down. It'd be like a computer way overloaded. We'd be staring, at the blue screen of death for our life. We just couldn't do it. So what our body does is it's like an electricity trying to get to ground. It takes the path of least resistance, and it goes the way that it's the easiest way to get there. And so we create within our brains and within our bodies things called neural pathways. We have over 100 billion nerve cells within our body, and they're all connected, and they transfer information through synapses, and these synapses we create these things called neural pathways, and we tend to follow those neural pathways over and over and over again. It's a thing that's familiar to us, and maybe that neural pathway is saying you're not good enough. That neural pathway is saying you don't deserve prosperity. That neural pathway is saying you can't have that. You're too old, you're too heavy, you're too bald, you can't do any of that. And that neural pathway keeps running over and over and over again. To illustrate this, I thought of the neighboring state. I grew up in Colorado. Next to Colorado is Kansas. And everybody knows Kansas. Kansas is flat. Kansas is boring. And that's because I-70 is what people experience in Kansas. They drive right through I-70, right through Kansas, and they see flat, they see boring, and they think that's what Kansas is, because that's the neural pathway. But that's not Kansas. Kansas has got some amazing things in it. Besides,
One more.
There we go. People don't realize that in the northwest corner of Kansas is almost a miniature Grand Canyon. There are these limestone formations, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And there are other places in Kansas that are the same. I didn't even know it was there, and I lived in Colorado. I used to hunt not far from there when I was a kid. But our neural pathways don't take us to the beauty of Kansas. And it's up to us to find the neural pathways within our own mind, within our own consciousness, that can take us to the beauty of Kansas. You didn't know I had a joke today, did you? Our ability to absorb what our senses can deliver to our brain was described in terms of time. And if we think what we can process in terms of time as about 3.5 minutes, that's what we can process as 3.5 minutes. What we're capable of seeing and processing with our five senses is 821 years. We're getting 3.5 minutes out of 821 years. Example, babies born, new baby. They have within them the ability to make all of the sounds for every language that any people use anywhere. Every baby has that in them, inherent within them. And yet, can they do it? Can they use that? No, we lose that after a while. We create neural pathways that allow us to speak the language that our parents speak. Some people have an extremely difficult time using the rolling R of the Romance languages, Pareto. I can do that one fairly well, but there are others that I cannot do. I could not speak Chinese or Japanese if I had to. I have a tough time with German, the complicated diphthongs in German. I couldn't begin to get those out. We forget that. I had a salesman that worked for me at GE for a long time. He was a great guy, he was a good salesman. And I noticed that his sales of wire were skewed opposite of what we were doing, particularly in the utility area. We all use aluminum wire in utilities these days. God, nobody could afford copper. And the new alloys are great, so you don't have the problems that we used to have with aluminum wire, 30, 40 years ago. But he never could sell any aluminum wire. And one day I finally asked him. He couldn't say aluminum. Aluminium, he could not get out the word aluminum. And it's just a neural pathway that had been created. When I came back to GE, I had left GE. I was gone for about 10 years, and I came back to GE. And I was tasked with rebuilding the business that I had left, and they wanted me to get it back to about the levels that I was before I left. And it was not easy. The competition had grown up, and the competition was a lot better and a lot smarter. They had done a lot better job. And I had been in our philosophy and our way of thinking for some time, so I began to use affirmations. I started to use some positive thoughts around that. I grew up in the Reginald Jones era of GE before Jack Welch, and our big thing was having goals. And so I would set these positive goals and try to reach and meet these positive goals. And one of my goals and one of my affirmations around that is, I am building a successful business. I am building a successful business. And for those of you that remember your foundations class, what are the 4 P's of affirmations? Positive, present tense, powerful, personal. I really fell through on the powerful and the personal thing. It didn't feel right to me. I'm sitting here saying, I am building a profitable business. It didn't feel that way. We were struggling. It was tough. And I wasn't building this powerful, positive business, a successful business. And then I remembered a thing that we had. It came from Catherine Ponder. And she said, to add before or after your affirmation, the following: in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way. In an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way. So I turned that into, in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way, I am now building a successful business. And that felt right. That felt right to me. And we almost immediately began turning things around. My last point is that the manifest universe is an effect. Everything that we see, feel, and touch is an effect. Ernest Holmes wrote, everything that we see, touch, taste, feel, hear, or grasp with the physical senses is an effect. It's right out of that textbook, Science of Mind textbook. Everything we see, touch, taste, feel, hear, or grasp with the physical senses is an effect. But I take that one step further. What we are creating right now with our thoughts, intentions, gratitude, and prayers is creating a new experience for our future. Don't be limited by your old neural paths. Create new ones. Create a new way of thinking. Conclusion today, we are running late. Our thoughts create our reality. Let's intentionally create it by intentionally thinking thoughts that we want. We pay attention to our negative talk, and we can create new neural pathways to go around that negative self-talk. And since everything around us is an effect, let's create new positive intentions now. Let us create new positive affirmations now. Let's pray affirmatively now. One of my colleagues, Reverend Abigail Shire, has a sign in her office, and she says, what if your tomorrow consisted only of what you were grateful for today? Let's be grateful for what we have, and let's be grateful for what we want more of in our lives. So it's with this awareness of our own ability to create our own future, that I invite my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in simply holding our congregation in love and light. In simply knowing a higher truth, that behind all of the effects that we experience, there is a mental cause. And we may not be aware of it, but if that mental cause is not something that we want to experience in our lives, we could very easily be creating that through our own negative self-talk. And we have the ability within us to change that negative self-talk. And so I speak my word for each and every person who's experiencing the negative effect of dis-ease, of health challenges. We simply know that there is a truth, that there is a blueprint of perfection within each and every one of us that knows how to be healthy. And it is that which we affirm and embrace and know. I speak my word for each and every person who is feeling the effects of lack and limitation and not having enough, more month than there is paycheck. We simply know that there's behind this effect, there is a spiritual truth, and that is that we live in a universe that is so vast. It is so prosperous. It is so abundant that our every need is automatically met at every moment. And I speak my word for each and every person who is experiencing separation. Separation from one another and separation from God. Knowing that as spiritual beings, having this earthly experience, that we can see this very real effect of separation, but it is only effect. The capital T truth is that we are beings of love, and we can step into love, loving one another in this and in every moment. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for love. We give thanks for health. We give thanks for abundance. And now I release these words to the working of a law, a soil that responds. I'm planting seeds of love, planting seeds of prosperity, planting seeds of health. And now we just let them sprout and grow. We let it go, we let it be, and so it is.